They say Louisiana never forgets. The land here remembers everything, the bones, the blood, the whispers that never made it to heaven. I used to think memory was a choice. But when you've seen what I've seen, you start to understand that some places remember for you. It had been 6 months since the Bureau kicked me out. 6 months since I broke a man's jaw against an interrogation table because he smiled when I asked where the girls were. I still remember his teeth hitting the tile. I still remember the way my supervisor looked at me, like I was just another broken weapon to be discarded. After that, New Orleans stopped being home. I lived out of a motel off Claiborne Avenue, a place that smelled like bleach and rain rot, where the walls sweated and the air conditioner rattled like a dying heart. Nights bled into mornings. I drank too much, slept too little. The ghosts of every unsolved case sat with me in the dark, whispering. And then one morning it came. A letter slid under my door. No stamp, no sender. Just my name written in black ink, Marcus Kane. Inside was a single sheet of paper, yellowed at the edges like something pulled from an old Bible. The handwriting was precise, deliberate. Mr. Kane, Black Hollow is in need of a sheriff. You come recommended. Ezekiel Voss. At the bottom, a seal, a black circle with the faint outline of a cypress tree and a serpent coiled around its roots. Black Hollow. I'd never heard of it. I looked it up on my laptop and nothing came up. No coordinates, no history, just one mention in an old forum post about ghost towns in the bayou, where someone wrote, "Don't go past the third bridge when the fog rolls in." I should have thrown the letter away. But when you've got nothing left to lose, even a lie starts to look like a second chance. So I packed a duffel, my Glock, my Remington, 3 boxes of ammo and a bottle of bourbon, and pointed my truck south, toward the swamp. The farther I drove, the quieter it got. The air grew thick, heavy with humidity and the sound of insects gnawing at the edges of silence. I passed through towns that looked like they'd given up on being alive, gas stations swallowed by kudzu, churches with doors chained shut, houses that leaned like drunks. By dusk, the road narrowed into a dirt path barely wide enough for one car. A sign appeared out of the fog. Black Hollow Pop, 217. The paint was so faded, it looked like the wood itself was bleeding. The GPS froze. The radio crackled. I caught a fragment of something, a woman's voice, faint like a whisper underwater. "Turn back, Marcus." I slammed the radio off. The swamp closed in on both sides. Trees hunched over the road, dripping moss like wet hair. The smell of decay was everywhere, a mix of mud, rot, and something metallic. That's when I saw it, a shape half submerged in the water ahead, a car. Its headlights flickered weakly through the fog, one still burning. Steam rose from the hood. I slowed, hand on my gun. "Hello," I called out. A sound answered, faint, human, desperate. A woman's voice, trembling. "Help, please." I waded into the swamp. The mud sucked at my boots. The closer I got, the colder the air became, unnaturally cold, like I'd stepped into the shadow of something that shouldn't exist. The car was flipped on its side, the windshield shattered. Through the broken glass I saw her, a young woman, blood streaked down her temple, trapped by the seatbelt. "I'm coming," I said, yanking at the door. It wouldn't budge. I braced my boot against the frame and pulled until it gave with a crack. She gasped, eyes fluttering open. "It's still here," she whispered. "What is?" She didn't answer. Her gaze shifted past me into the fog behind my shoulder. And then I heard it. A sound like water moving against skin. Slow, deliberate. I turned, gun raised. Something stood between the cypress trees, tall, thin, its shape barely human. The fog clung to it like flesh, its eyes white and without pupils, glowing faintly. It didn't move, but the mist around it pulsed like it was breathing. "Stay back," I said. It tilted its head. Then it moved, not walking, not running but gliding, its limbs too long, its body flickering between shapes. I fired once, twice. The shots echoed through the swamp. The thing vanished into the fog. But the sound didn't fade, it just shifted. Now it was everywhere, whispering through the reeds, the water, even inside my skull. You shouldn't have come here. By the time I got the woman out, my shoulder was bleeding. I didn't remember when it happened. She was shaking, eyes wild. Name? I asked, dragging her toward the truck. Clara, she breathed, Clara Beaumont. Her voice had a New Orleans lilt. Her clothes were soaked, torn at the sleeves. She clutched something in her fist, a silver locket. When I asked about it, she just said, "It's proof." Of what? S? We climbed into the truck, mud splattering the seats. I floored it. As we pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. For a second I saw it again, standing in the road, motionless, eyes glowing like two drowned moons. Then the fog swallowed it whole. Black Hollow appeared out of nowhere, a cluster of wooden houses and flickering lanterns sitting atop the swamp like a fevered dream. The road ended at a church converted into a clinic. A woman in a white coat, late 30s, sharp eyes, calm voice stepped out. "You're bleeding," she said. "I've had worse." She glanced at Clara. "She's worse." Inside, the place smelled of antiseptic and damp wood. Crucifixes hung from the walls beside faded medical charts. As she stitched my shoulder, I asked her name. "Dr. Amelia Song," she said. "You must be the new sheriff." I didn't know I'd accepted the job yet. She smiled, thin, knowing. No one ever does. Later that night, Ezekiel Voss came to see me. He was tall, white-haired, his eyes the color of swamp water. He wore a priest's collar under a weathered coat, and his voice had that soft, southern patience that always makes you think you're being forgiven, even when you're not. "Mr. Kane," he said, extending a hand, "welcome to Black Hollow." "Hell of a welcome," I muttered. He looked at my bandaged arm, then at Clara asleep on the cot. "The swamp takes its toll, but it also gives back." I frowned. "You sent the letter." "Yes," he smiled faintly. "Black Hollow chooses its own, the ones who have lost something, the ones who still think they can fix it." I didn't answer. Outside, the fog pressed against the stained glass windows like a living thing. Somewhere deep in the swamp, something screamed, a sound too human to be an animal, too ancient to be a man. Ezekiel turned toward it, listening. Then he said, almost gently, "Don't wander after dark, Sheriff. The Hollow remembers." That night I couldn't sleep. The wind carried a smell like wet earth and rust. Every so often, I heard the creak of wood outside, footsteps that stopped when I moved. I found a notebook on the clinic desk, half burned. Inside, a scrawled line caught my eye. "The swamp is not water, it's memory made flesh." I looked out the window. Beyond the fog, something moved, a figure standing at the edge of the trees, watching. And for the first time in years, I felt it again. That old familiar pull of fear. The kind that crawls up your spine and whispers that whatever you're looking at isn't looking back, it's waiting. The last gas station before the swamp looked abandoned, but the lights still buzzed. I stopped anyway. The tank was half full, but something about the air here, heavy, damp, and humming like an insect's wing, told me it'd be stupid not to top up. The sign above the rusted roof read, "Rue, Gas and Bait." The paint had peeled into strange, jagged shapes like runes. I got out, boots sinking slightly into the muddy gravel. A single light flickered above the door, the kind that hums like it's trying to whisper something. Inside, a man sat behind the counter, his head down. Old gray hair slicked back, the kind of face that's seen hurricanes and funerals and never smiled at either. He looked up when the bell rang. His eyes were pale, the kind of blue that belonged to dead fish. "Heading south?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "toward Black Hollow." The name seemed to wake something in him. His lips twitched, then tightened. He spat into a rusted tin can beside his stool. "Ain't no town by that name," he said slowly. I shrugged. "Then I guess I'm driving into the middle of nowhere." He stared at me long enough for the silence to grow teeth. Then he pushed himself up and shuffled toward the shelves. "Middle of nowhere's better than what's past it," he muttered. When I stepped outside again, the fog had thickened, not rolling in, just appearing like it had been waiting for me to look away. The air smelled of rain and decay, a mixture of salt and something metallic. I filled the tank, left the pump hanging, and drove on. By the time the sun started dying, the swamp had swallowed the road. The asphalt turned to cracked concrete, then to dirt, then to something I couldn't name, soft, wet, alive. Cypress trees leaned inward, their roots clawing through the mud like twisted fingers. Spanish moss hung like old flesh, swaying in air that didn't move. The GPS lost signal an hour ago. My phone said no service, and stayed that way. But the strangest thing wasn't the silence. It was the feeling that there were patterns in the fog, shapes that formed and dissolved just beyond the headlights. Once, I thought I saw a man, tall, thin, standing in the reeds, but when I slowed down, there was nothing. Then the smell hit me. Rot wet iron. Blood. I drove slower. The tires hissed over the muck. That's when I saw it, a car flipped onto its side, half submerged in the water. Its headlights still burned weakly through the fog, throwing pale light across the cypress trunks. I killed the engine and stepped out. The air felt thick enough to chew. Frogs croaked somewhere distant, but even that sound seemed muffled. The water beside the car rippled, slow, deliberate. Then I heard it. A voice. Faint, ragged. "Help, please." It came from inside the wreck. I waded closer, gun drawn. My boots sank deep into the mud, the water reaching my knees. The car was a silver sedan, newer model, maybe a year old, license plate half torn off. The windshield was cracked like a spider web. "Hey," I called, "can you hear me?" Another weak moan. A hand pressed against the glass from the inside, small, bloodied, female. I holstered my weapon and grabbed the door handle, but it was jammed. I tried the back, then the trunk. Nothing. Then through the fog behind me, I heard splashing. Slow. Heavy. Coming closer. I froze. The sound wasn't footsteps. It was something dragging itself through the swamp, something big. I turned. At first I thought it was a trick of the fog. A shape, tall and hunched, moving with the rhythm of a man but wrong in the joints. Its outline shimmered like heat rising off asphalt. Then two white eyes appeared, glowing faintly, lidless. Every instinct screamed, "Run." Instead, I raised my gun. "Stay back." It didn't stop. The thing's movements were slow, deliberate, not the kind of rush you expect from an animal. It was studying me, testing the distance. Then it spoke. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe it was the fog itself speaking through it. A whisper that came from all directions at once. "You came too soon." The gun went off before I realized I'd pulled the trigger. The shot cracked through the swamp, echoing like thunder. The shape jerked back, dissolving into mist. When I looked again, it was gone. Only the ripples remained. I wrenched open the car door with a loud metallic snap. A young woman lay inside, soaked, trembling. Her skin was pale, lips blue. "Easy," I said, reaching in. "You're all right." She blinked at me, unfocused. It's still here." "I know," I said. "We need to move." Her hand clutched my arm tight, desperate. "Don't let it touch you." Then her eyes rolled back, and she fainted. I lifted her out, staggering under her weight. My shoulder throbbed where something, a branch or maybe claws, had grazed me earlier. The cut burned like acid. By the time I got back to the car, the fog had thickened into a wall. I shoved her into the passenger seat, slammed the door, and floored it. The road twisted endlessly. The fog swallowed my headlights whole. At some point, the surface changed again, water over gravel. I couldn't tell where the land ended or where I was driving anymore. Then, out of nowhere, a wooden sign loomed up on the roadside. Welcome to Black Hollow. Founded 1823. Below the letters, someone had carved new words into the wood with a knife. No one leaves. A minute later, the swamp gave way to a clearing, the faint outline of a town emerging from the mist. Wooden houses, sagging porches, a single church spire stabbing upward like a bone through flesh. The woman beside me stirred. Where are we?" she whispered. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know, and worse, I wasn't sure I wanted to. When we reached the town's edge, my headlights flickered and died. For a few seconds, the car coasted in total darkness until I stopped in front of a crooked sign that read, SD Mary's Clinic, open 24 hours. The letters were chipped, the white paint gone yellow like old teeth. Behind the sign stood what had once been a church, its steeple sagging, stained glass cracked, the bell missing from its tower. A faint light glowed through the boarded windows. I carried the woman inside. The door creaked open to reveal a long hallway lined with pews turned into makeshift benches. The air smelled faintly of alcohol and swamp water. A voice called from deeper within. Put her on the table. The woman who appeared was in her mid-30s, dark hair tied back, sharp eyes behind thin-framed glasses. She wore a white coat too clean for a place this decayed. I'm Dr. Amelia Song, she said, her tone brisk. You're bleeding. It's not mine, I lied. She looked at my shoulder anyway. That's a lie. She didn't wait for permission. She just guided me to a chair and peeled back the torn fabric of my jacket. Her fingers were steady, professional, but there was something cautious about the way she worked, like she'd seen wounds she couldn't explain before. What happened out there? She asked. Car accident, some kind of animal attacked. Her eyes flicked to mine. What kind? I didn't get a good look. She cleaned the wound with alcohol. It burned like hell. Well, she said finally, whatever it was, it cut deep, but you're lucky. Nothing vital. The girl on the table groaned softly. Amelia went to her, checked her pulse, then looked back at me. Who is she? No idea. I found her in a wreck about 3 miles out, said something was after her. Amelia's expression darkened. She's not wrong. While Amelia worked, I glanced around. The pews were filled with boxes, gauze, syringes, old IV bags. Crucifixes hung crooked on the walls, and someone had painted over the stained glass saints with white paint, erasing their faces. Outside, thunder rolled, though the sky hadn't shown a single flash of lightning since I'd entered the swamp. The girl stirred again. Clara, she murmured. My name's Clara. Easy, I said. You're safe. No one's safe here. Amelia looked at me, her eyes unreadable. She's not wrong about that either. I frowned. You keep saying that. Why? Before she could answer, the door at the far end opened, and an old man stepped inside. He was tall, broad-shouldered despite his age, dressed in a dark suit that looked one size too large. His silver hair was neatly combed, his face carved with the calm confidence of someone who's used to being obeyed. Doctor, he greeted. His voice was deep, slow, and measured, the kind that could bless or condemn in the same tone. Then his gaze landed on me. You must be Mr. Kane. I stiffened. Do I know you? He smiled thinly. No, but I know you, Ezekiel Voss. The name matched the signature on the letter I'd received. He extended a hand. I didn't take it. You sent me the letter, I said, about the job. That's right, he replied. Black Hollow has been without a sheriff for some time. We needed someone with experience. And you just happen to know where to find me. Ezekiel chuckled softly. No one finds you, Mr. Kane. The Hollow calls who it needs. I glanced at Amelia, but she was busy with Clara again, avoiding my eyes. "What is this place?" I asked. "Home," Ezekiel said simply. "To those the world has forgotten, you'll learn soon enough." Something about his calmness made my skin crawl. He studied me for a long moment, his eyes sharp behind the politeness. "You've seen something already, haven't you, out in the swamp?" "I saw something," I admitted. "Tall, eyes like light through milk." Ezekiel nodded slowly, as if I'd confirmed a truth he already knew. "You met the Hollow's shadow, then?" "The what?" He took a step closer. I could smell incense and old wood on him, like he'd been living in the church long before it became a clinic. "The darkness that protects us," he said, "and punishes those who don't belong." "Protects," I echoed. "That thing tried to kill me." "Perhaps it was testing you." I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in his tone. "I don't buy into ghost stories," I said. "Neither did I," he said softly, "until I saw my own reflection blink when I didn't." The air went cold. Even Amelia stopped moving for a moment. Ezekiel walked to the door, his hand resting briefly on Clara's shoulder. "Let her rest," he said to Amelia, "and find this man a room. He'll need it before dawn." Then he looked at me one last time. "Welcome to Black Hollow, Sheriff Kane. May the Hollow be merciful." He left without another word, his footsteps echoing down the wooden hallway. For a while none of us spoke. Finally Amelia exhaled. "You shouldn't have come here." I didn't have much of a choice. "There's always a choice," she said, "but this place, it takes them away one by one." I watched the door Ezekiel had gone through. "He's the mayor." "Something like that," she said. "He runs the town, the church, the council, everything." "And you trust him?" She gave a small, humorless laugh. "I don't trust anyone here, especially not him." She finished bandaging my shoulder and straightened. "You can rest in the back room for the night. Don't go outside after midnight. If you hear whispering through the walls, don't answer it." I studied her face. She wasn't joking. "Why?" I asked. She looked past me toward the boarded windows. "Because it's not always the wind." Later, lying on the cot in the back room, I stared at the ceiling. The boards above me were warped, water-stained, like veins running through old skin. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear frogs, the soft lap of swamp water, and beneath it, something else. A hum, low, constant, like a heartbeat buried in the earth. Clara's words echoed in my head. "Don't let it touch you." I reached for my gun, laid it beside me, and closed my eyes. When I woke hours later, the lantern in the hallway had gone out. The clinic was dark, too dark. Then came the whisper. "Marcus." I sat up. The voice came from the other side of the wall, soft, almost pleading. "Marcus, you left me." My blood froze. It was Clara. It was Amelia. It was Lydia. My sister's voice. I stood, pressed my ear against the wall. The sound was coming from behind the altar, the place where the church's main doors had been sealed shut with planks. "You left me in the dark." The voice cracked, then faded into a wet rustle, like something dragging itself through the mud outside. I waited for a long time before I moved again. When I finally dared to look through the window slat, the fog had returned, and standing just beyond the fence, half shrouded in it, was a tall figure, motionless, watching. Two white eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Morning came without sunlight. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was fog pressing against the window like a living thing, pale and heavy, swallowing the outlines of trees and houses outside. The clinic smelled of damp linen and antiseptic. The world beyond the glass looked colorless, as though the swamp had drained it dry overnight. I sat up slowly. The ache in my shoulder pulsed with each heartbeat. Someone had left a tray of food beside the cot, cold biscuits, a tin of coffee, and a note scribbled in neat, slanted handwriting. "Don't go beyond the main road until I find you. A.S." I pocketed the note and took my gun from the table. My instincts hadn't dulled, not after years in the bureau. Something about this town whispered danger the way corpses whispered rot. When I stepped outside, the fog parted reluctantly, curling around me like smoke. The street stretched ahead, lined with sagging wooden houses. Curtains moved when I passed, but I never saw who watched me. Every porch looked the same, flowers dead in their pots, mailboxes rusted shut, names carved into wood too weathered to read. And there was no sound. No cars, no radios, no dogs. Just the faint, rhythmic croak of frogs and the slow drip of water somewhere nearby. Black Hollow was alive in its silence. I found the sheriff's office at the end of the main street, a squat brick building with a rusted badge sign that read Town Constable. The lock was broken. Inside, a single desk stood under a leaking ceiling, covered in a thick layer of dust. There were papers scattered everywhere, most of them half-burned. One caught my eye, a missing persons report dated May 3, 2021, exactly a year before. Name: Clara Beaumont. Occupation: journalist. Status: missing, presumed dead. I stared at it until the letters blurred. The ink had run, but her name was still clear. So she'd been here before. Before last night. Before I found her in the wreck. The air grew colder. Looking for something, Sheriff? The voice startled me. I turned to see Ezekiel Voss standing in the doorway, the same immaculate suit, the same calm smile. He stepped inside, brushing invisible dust from his sleeve. I see you found your office. Not much, but it's home. I held up the report. You filed this. He adjusted his collar. Every arrival leaves a record, even those who disappear. Disappear, I repeated. You mean die? Not always. He approached the desk, placing his hand gently on the paper. Time runs differently here. You'll learn that soon enough. I narrowed my eyes. What the hell does that mean? It means, he said softly, you've been here before. I laughed, short and bitter. Try again. He didn't flinch. I've seen you, Marcus. Every year around this time, the Hollow brings you back. You never remember, of course. None of you do. He smiled sadly, as if discussing weather patterns. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. You expect me to believe that? He didn't answer, just walked toward the door. Meet me at the town hall when you're ready. There are things you must understand before nightfall. When he left, I stared after him, my pulse pounding. The fog outside had thickened again, swallowing his figure as soon as he stepped into it. I searched the office for anything else, evidence, files, a map, but everything stopped abruptly in 2021. No reports after that, as if time itself had folded. A creak sounded behind me. I turned fast, hand on my gun. Clara stood in the doorway, pale but awake, her arm bandaged. Her eyes darted around the room before settling on the report in my hand. So you found it, she said quietly. You were here before, I said, a year ago. She hesitated, then nodded. I came to investigate disappearances in the swamp. Locals warned me not to. I didn't listen. What happened? She looked out the window. I remember fog, screaming, then nothing. Next thing I knew, I woke up in that car, bleeding. Like the town reset itself, I said. Clara met my gaze. Exactly. We left the office together. The fog had thinned just enough to reveal more of the town, a diner with broken windows, a church tower leaning sideways, a row of abandoned cars half submerged in mud. This place shouldn't exist, Clara said. It's not on any GPS, not on any map. Every time I try to find it online, the connection drops. You think it's some kind of hallucination? She shook her head. No, too real. The people here, they're trapped. They think this is all there is. Some don't even remember being anywhere else. We passed an old woman sweeping her porch with a branch broom. She didn't look up, didn't blink, just kept sweeping the same patch of ground over and over. Clara murmured, That's Mrs. Lavo. I saw her last year. She hasn't aged a day. The town hall stood near the water's edge, its roof warped, walls stained with moss. A faded mural of angels and serpents decorated the entrance, paint cracked like old skin. Inside, benches lined the walls, and candles burned in glass jars that hadn't melted. Ezekiel waited near the altar. Yes, the hall had once been a church too. Everything here seemed recycled, repurposed, as if the town had built itself from its own remains. He gestured toward the benches. "Please sit." Clara and I didn't move. He smiled faintly. "Very well. You've both seen the signs, I assume, the fog, the silence, the missing roads." "Tell me what's going on," I said. Ezekiel clasped his hands. Black Hollow was founded in 1843 by freed slaves who fled the plantations upriver. They built their sanctuary deep in the swamp to escape their hunters, but fear of capture drove them to desperation. They called upon an old spirit, one older than the river itself, the Loa of the deep marsh. He looked up at the mural behind him. In the candlelight, the painted angels seemed to twist into something less holy. "They made a pact," Ezekiel continued. "Protection in exchange for worship." The spirit answered. It kept outsiders away. The hollow thrived. "And then," Clara asked. "The spirit wanted more. It fed on memory, on fear. Those who tried to leave vanished. Those who stayed forgot why they'd come. Over generations, we learned to live with it." I felt my stomach tighten. "You're saying this thing still exists?" Ezekiel smiled thinly. "You've already met it, haven't you?" I thought of the white eyes in the fog, the voice whispering my sister's name. "Why bring me here?" I demanded. "Why send that letter?" "Because every cycle needs a warden," he said softly. "Someone who can face it." Clara took a step back. "Cycle." Ezekiel turned to her, voice low. "Every year on the same night the hollow resets. The chosen few forget. The rest disappear into the swamp. It's the price of our protection." "Protection from what?" I asked. His eyes flicked to the window where fog pressed like a second wall. "From the world outside, from time itself. Out there you've been missing for months, Marcus. Here you've only just arrived." The floor seemed to shift beneath me. When we left the hall, the sun was already sinking, though it felt like morning had barely passed. The air smelled of rain and decay. Clara walked beside me, silent for a while, then said, "He's lying about something." "I know," I said. "But about what?" I didn't answer. My mind was still replaying his words. "You've been here before." We stopped at the edge of the pier. The water below was black and still, reflecting nothing. I threw a pebble into it and waited for the ripple. There was none. The stone just vanished. The swamp swallowed it whole. That was when I realized the truth Ezekiel hadn't said aloud. This wasn't a place trapped in time. It was a place hungry for it. And it had already started feeding. The rain started just after dusk. It came down in slow, deliberate sheets, not the cleansing kind that cools the air, but a heavy, suffocating drizzle that clung to the skin and made everything smell of moss and rust. Clara and I stood under the warped overhang of the old bait shop near the pier. The lights inside flickered with a sickly yellow glow. From where we stood, the swamp looked endless, a black ocean of roots and mist stretching beyond sight. "You really think the first disappearance started out there?" she asked, tightening her coat. "Ezekiel's story mentioned the pact," I said. "The first settlers built their altar near the deep marsh, a place they called the Mouth." Clara frowned. "The Mouth." "According to the files, every missing person was last seen near it." I looked out at the water. "If there's truth to what he said, that's where it all begins." She shivered, glancing toward the fog. "Then we'd better go before night decides to close its teeth." We took a flat-bottomed skiff from the dock. The wood creaked under our weight. Every push of the oar stirred the water into lazy, black circles. Somewhere in the distance, a heron screamed, a long, ragged sound that didn't fade so much as drown. No stars above, No horizon, just a ceiling of fog. After what felt like an hour, the air changed, warmer, thicker, like something was breathing through the swamp itself. That's when we saw them, carvings. Figures etched into the trunks of cypress trees, eyes, mouths, hands reaching upward. Some were freshly cut. Others were so old the bark had grown over them, leaving warped faces peering through the wood. "Someone been keeping this place alive," Clara murmured. I ran my fingers over one of the carvings. "No, not someone." "What do you mean?" "These marks," I said, "they're ritual boundaries, a containment pattern. Someone been trying to hold something in." The wind shifted. For a second I thought I heard whispers rising from the water. We reached a clearing. The fog hung low, glowing faintly blue. Beneath it, half submerged in mud, stood a circle of stones, large, smooth, and carved with symbols older than language. "The mouth," I whispered. Clara stepped closer. "It's beautiful." "No," I said quietly, "it's a warning." The air felt wrong, heavy and electric, like standing too close to a storm. The hairs on my arms rose. Clara crouched by the stones. "There's something written here." She brushed away moss, revealing faint letters beneath the carvings. "We remember to forget." "What the hell does that mean?" She didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the water beyond the stones. "Marcus, look." Something moved beneath the surface. At first I thought it was a log, long, dark, drifting. But then it turned and I saw eyes. Dozens of them. Milky, glinting faintly in the foglight. Clara stumbled backward. "Jesus Christ." The thing didn't rise, didn't lunge. It just watched. And then the whispers came again. Clearer this time, a chorus of voices, overlapping. "Marcus, come home. You left us here. You promised." I froze. The sound wasn't coming from the swamp. It was inside my head. Clara's hand gripped my arm. "Marcus, hey, look at me, you're bleeding." I blinked. Blood was trickling from my nose. The whispering stopped. The fog thinned. The water stilled. "What the hell was that?" she said, breathless. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because in that moment I saw something impossible, the reflection of the stones in the water forming a symbol I knew. The Bureau's insignia. We got back to the pier in silence. The town was darker than before, like the night had thickened into something tangible. The gas lamps along Main Street burned low, sputtering as we passed. Each house we walked by seemed emptier than it had hours ago, curtains drawn, doors cracked open, lights flickering in rooms with no one inside. Clara spoke first. "You saw it too, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. "The insignia from your bureau." "Yeah." She exhaled. "Then it's not just superstition. Someone, maybe your people, knew about this place." "I don't know how," I said, "but if they did, they covered it up." "Or erased it," she said quietly, "like the town itself." At the corner of the street we heard a piano playing, soft, distant, drifting through the fog. We followed the sound to the diner. Inside, the jukebox was lit, faint pink glow, spinning a cracked record that hadn't worked in years. Behind the counter stood a man in a white apron, back turned to us. His head moved slightly to the rhythm of the music. "Hello," Clara said. No answer. The man didn't move when I stepped closer. Then I saw it, his reflection in the metal of the coffee machine. He was smiling wide, too wide, and his eyes were gone. Just empty, black sockets dripping something thick and dark down his cheeks. Clara gasped, "Marcus." I pulled her back as the jukebox stuttered. The record skipped. The song warped, slowing into a distorted hum that sounded like 100 voices murmuring at once. The man turned. And the lights went out. We ran, out of the diner, down the street, through the fog. The whispers followed, not from behind us, but from everywhere. "Don't run. You came back to finish it. You can't leave again." I didn't realize I was holding Clara's hand until we reached the clinic. We slammed the door shut, locked it, and collapsed against the wall. For a moment, there was only the sound of rain on the roof and our own ragged breathing. Then from the hallway, a slow knock. 3 times. Knuckles on wood. Clara whispered, "Please tell me that's Ezekiel." I raised my gun, moving toward the sound. "Stay behind me." Another knock, louder this time. I reached for the handle. When I opened the door, no one was there. Just a tape recorder on the floor, its red light blinking. I picked it up and pressed play. A crackle of static, then Ezekiel's voice. "The cycle has begun again. The mouth is open. You have until dawn to choose." Then silence. Clara sank into a chair. "Choose what?" I rewound the tape and listened again, but the message was the same. "The mouth is open," I murmured. "That means it's feeding." She looked at me. "Feeding on what?" "Us," I said. "Our memories, our time." The rain outside grew heavier, drumming like footsteps. I looked at the clock on the wall, its second hand twitching back and forth between 2 marks, not moving forward. Time was stuttering. Clara noticed it too. "Marcus." I stared at the clock. "It's starting." That night sleep didn't come. Every shadow in the clinic seemed alive, stretching, bending. Somewhere between waking and dream, I saw the swamp again, but this time it wasn't outside. It was inside the building, swallowing the walls. Water rose past my boots. Shapes moved beneath the surface, faces, arms reaching up. And at the center of it all stood the same figure from before, tall, faceless, crowned with antlers of bone. It raised a hand and whispered, "You promised to remember." I woke up screaming. The fog outside the window pulsed like a heartbeat. Clara sat by the door, gun in hand, her face pale. "You too?" I nodded. She didn't ask what I saw. She didn't have to. Because somewhere outside, beneath the sound of rain, we both heard it, a low, wet groan rising from the swamp. And it was getting closer. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the world didn't look any brighter. The fog still clung to the town like a second skin, pale and unmoving. I couldn't even see the edge of Main Street from the clinic's front window, only the vague outline of the old church steeple, bending slightly to one side like it was listening to something underground. Clara was asleep in the chair beside the door, her gun still in her lap. I didn't wake her. She earned what little rest she could steal. I made coffee, black, bitter, burned, and stared at the tape recorder on the counter. The red light blinked again, even though I'd pulled the batteries out hours ago. "The cycle has begun again." Ezekiel's voice repeated in my head like a wound that wouldn't close. "Choose what? Choose who?" I found Amelia in the back room, sorting through medical supplies. Her eyes were ringed with fatigue, her sleeves rolled to the elbows. "You look like hell," she said without looking up. "I feel worse." She smiled faintly. "Welcome to Black Hollow." I placed the recorder on the table between us. "He left this at the door. Do you know what it means?" Her hands froze. The glass vial she was holding slipped from her fingers and shattered. "Where did you get that?" "I told you he left it." "No," she said quietly. "He doesn't leave things, not unless he wants you to follow." I leaned forward. "Ezekiel." Amelia nodded. "He used to be a priest before the Hollow changed him, before the thing in the swamp gave him purpose." "What kind of purpose?" She hesitated. "You really don't know, do you?" I said nothing. Amelia looked toward the window. "You were here before, Marcus, long before." The words hit harder than I expected. I've never been here before in my life. Amelia met my eyes. "You think that, but this place, it doesn't remember time like we do. It folds it, bleeds it. People come back without realizing they've returned." "That's impossible." "So is a town that doesn't exist on any map." I wanted to argue, but something inside me shifted, a flicker behind my eyes, a smell of wet earth and blood. A memory surfaced, a child's voice calling my name in the dark, the sound of chains dragging through water, a scream cut short by a wet snap. I blinked, gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. Amelia stepped closer. You remember something, don't you? Just flashes. Then it's starting. Clara woke around noon. We packed what little ammunition and food we had left. The fog outside hadn't lifted. Amelia refused to come. If the hollow wants you, she said, it'll find you, but don't bring it back here. Her eyes met mine. You can't save her if you stay. I didn't ask who she meant, Clara or someone else. We followed the narrow dirt path behind the church, leading toward the outer marsh. The mud sucked at our boots with each step, the air growing heavier, thicker. It wasn't long before we reached the church's rear annex, a structure I hadn't noticed before, half collapsed and covered in vines. A weathered sign above the doorway read, Black Hollow Sheriff's Department. Clara brushed away the moss from the door. You were invited here to be sheriff. Yeah. Then why does this place look 100 years old? The wood beneath her hand crumbled into dust. I stepped inside. The air smelled of mildew and smoke, desks overturned, files scattered across the floor, cobwebs stretched across the rafters like veins. In the corner stood a wall of filing cabinets, rusted and warped. I pried one open. Inside, beneath a layer of mold, were stacks of yellowed papers stamped with the Bureau's seal. Clara pulled one out, squinting at the faded type. Operation Eidolon, she read aloud. Subject, Containment Anomaly, Louisiana Sector. I felt the room tilt slightly. That insignia, the one I'd seen reflected in the swamp. She turned to me. Marcus, your bureau knew about the curse. Not just knew, I said slowly. They studied it. We spent hours digging through the files. Most were water damaged, but what survived painted a picture that made my stomach twist. Between 1982 and 1999, the FBI had conducted a series of covert investigations into supernatural anomalies across the southern states. Black Hollow, then known as Parish Delta 9, was their first containment zone. They discovered something ancient beneath the swamp, something that couldn't be moved, only appeased. Project Eidolon was meant to bind it through ritual and human sacrifice. The last entry was dated May 12, 1999. Subject containment compromised, all personnel lost, initiating Psycho Protocol. Clara looked up, Psycho Protocol. I stared at the words until they blurred. The time loop, every failure resets the town. Her voice dropped, and the people. Reborn, I said, trapped in repetition, roles assigned, memories altered. She swallowed. So who are we in this version? I didn't answer, because I already knew. A sound came from the back of the building, soft, dragging footsteps. Clara raised her gun. Wait, I whispered. The footsteps stopped. Then a voice, low, trembling, familiar. Marcus. I turned. A figure stood in the doorway, half shadow, half light. Wet hair clung to her face. Her clothes were torn, but I'd have recognized her anywhere. Leela. My sister. The one I'd failed to save. Clara's voice was a whisper. Marcus, that's not. Stay back, I snapped. Leela stepped forward. Her eyes glowed faintly white. You left me in the water. I felt my throat close. You're not real. She tilted her head. Does that make the guilt easier? Every word was a knife. You tried to save me, she said, but you never asked who threw me in. Her voice warped, deepened. The light in her eyes spread across her face like cracks in glass. Then she lunged. I fired twice. The bullets hit the wall behind her. She was gone. Only the smell of mud and iron remained. Clara grabbed my arm. Marcus, listen to me. It's using her image, it's trying to break you. I shook my head, trying to breathe. No, that wasn't just an illusion. It knew things no one else could. That's what it does, she said. It knows. We left the station in silence. Outside, the fog was thicker than before, pulsing, shifting, as if alive. Somewhere beyond it, a bell rang, 3 slow tolls. The same number as the knocks on the clinic door. Clara gripped my hand. We're being called. To what? To choose, she said softly, like Ezekiel said. We followed the sound through the swamp. The fog parted in slow, breathing waves, revealing a clearing surrounded by cypress trees. At the center stood Ezekiel Voss. He was kneeling before a stone altar, his hands clasped in prayer, his body trembling as if fighting invisible chains. When he looked up, his eyes were white, not blind but burning. Marcus, he said, smiling faintly, welcome home. Clara raised her gun. Don't move. Ezekiel chuckled. You still think bullets mean anything here? He stood slowly. His shadow stretched unnaturally long, curling across the ground like tendrils. The hollow remembers you, Agent Kane, he said. You built its cage. You fed it the first time. You swore you return. I felt the world tilt again. I don't remember. That's the curse, Ezekiel said softly. It makes you forget so you'll return willingly, but now you must finish what you began. He gestured toward the altar. 2 knives rested there, one silver, one blackened by age. One frees the town, he said. The other binds it anew. You must choose before dawn. Clara's voice shook. He's lying, Marcus. Ezekiel smiled wider. Am I? The fog thickened, swirling around us. Beneath the ground, something vast stirred, the earth breathing, the water rising. Choose. The word echoed through the trees. I looked at the knives, then at Clara, then at the preacher who was no longer a man. Somewhere deep in my memory, a child screamed. And the swamp opened its eyes. The sound came first, a deep, steady rhythm that felt like it was pulsing through the mud beneath my boots. It wasn't thunder. It was a heartbeat. The swamp was alive. Ezekiel stood motionless before the altar, fog spiraling around him like white fire. The knives shimmered in the half-light, one dull and heavy, the other glinting like a sliver of moonlight. Clara's hand tightened around mine. We're leaving, she whispered. Ezekiel laughed softly. Leave, there's nowhere left to go. He lifted his arms and the fog behind him shifted, shapes forming and collapsing like waves of smoke. Faces flickered inside them. Men, women, children, all whispering in unison. Choose, choose, choose. Each word sent a pulse through my skull. Clara took a step back. What are they? Ezekiel turned, eyes gleaming. The echoes of the last cycle, the ones who didn't choose. The faces screamed silently, their mouths opening into black holes before vanishing. I raised my gun. You end this right now. Ezekiel smiled. You can't end what you began. The memory hit like a hammer, the stench of gasoline, the burn of swamp air on my face. I was in uniform again, years younger, a badge still pinned to my chest. I stood at the edge of a wooden dock, floodlights cutting through the fog. Men in tactical gear surrounded a massive steel door rising from the swamp, a vault built into the earth, covered in ancient symbols. Containment stable, a voice said behind me. Agent Kane, your authorization to proceed. I heard my own voice answer, open it. The metal screamed as the vault split open. A wave of black water exploded upward, swallowing the dock, the men, the lights. Something came through, eyes white as bone, fingers like reeds dragging itself into the light. And then silence. When the world returned, the swamp was empty, everyone gone but me. Marcus. Clara's voice snapped me back. I staggered, clutching my head. I was here, I whispered. I released it. Ezekiel nodded. And so it marked you. His hand hovered above the blackened knife. That blade binds, the silver one severs. Either way, blood must spill. Clara raised her weapon again. I'll spill yours if you take another step. Ezekiel's smile didn't falter. You think you're separate from him, from this. He pointed at her. You came from the hollow too, you just forgot. Clara's voice trembled. You're lying. Are you sure? The fog shifted. For a moment behind Clara, I saw something, her silhouette splitting, flickering like two versions of herself fighting for control. One pale, the other smeared with mud and blood. She gasped, stumbling backward. What's happening to me? Ezekiel spread his arms. The cycle is correcting itself. The ground trembled. Water surged up around the altar, rising fast, swallowing the cypress roots. From the murk below, a shadow uncoiled, massive, serpentine, its shape too fluid to comprehend. Only its eyes were clear, glowing with white fire. The L letter 1EDD, INGUY letter 1EC1, N distroke letter 1ES7M, L letter 1EA7Y. The curse. I aimed my rifle and fired. The shot cracked through the fog, useless. The bullet passed through the creature as though through smoke. It moved closer, the air around it humming. The smell of rot and iron filled my lungs. Marcus, Clara whispered, we have to go. But the thing spoke, not with a voice but inside my head. You opened the door once, you will open it again. The water around my feet shimmered, reflecting not the present but the past me, kneeling by the vault, the same knives in my hands. Choose. The word rippled through my bones. Clara grabbed my shoulder. Don't listen, it's trying to pull you in. Her voice felt far away. She was with you then too, the voice whispered. She betrayed you, she left you to drown. I turned toward Clara, her eyes widened. Marcus, no. The memory slammed into me, her face, identical, screaming as she sank into the mud, water filling her lungs. You let her die, and you brought her back. The truth twisted inside me like a blade. She's part of it, I muttered, a reflection. Clara's tears streaked through the dirt on her cheeks. Maybe I am, but I'm real now, and I'm with you. Her hand found mine, warm, trembling, alive. Ezekiel stepped closer, his robe soaked to the knees. You see now, she's the offering, the blood that binds the hollow closed. I raised my gun toward him. You're not getting near her. He tilted his head. Then you'll have to make the sacrifice yourself. The swamp thundered. The curse rose higher, a wave of darkness, stretching upward like a living storm. Ezekiel shouted something in an ancient tongue. His body convulsed, his skin splitting open as white light poured out. The thing was entering him, filling him, shaping him into its mouthpiece. You are mine, Marcus Kane. You always were. The voice came through both him and the air itself. I fired again, once, twice, but each bullet vanished into the glow. Clara screamed as the water surged, knocking her off her feet. I grabbed her arm and pulled her back toward the altar. The knives still gleamed there, vibrating as if alive. Ezekiel's voice was no longer his own. Choose, and the hollow will rest. He reached out, and the blackened blade flew into his hand like metal drawn to a magnet. I didn't think, I grabbed the silver one. It burned cold in my grip. Blood for silence, blood for peace. I turned to Clara. Run. I'm not leaving you. Go. She hesitated only a second before stumbling toward the trees. Ezekiel lunged. His hand caught my shoulder, nails slicing through my shirt. I spun, driving the knife into his side. He screamed, a sound not human, but the voice of the swamp itself. Light exploded from the wound, flooding the clearing. The world folded inward. When I opened my eyes, the fog was gone. The sky above was colorless, frozen. The swamp stretched out like a painting, motionless, dead. Ezekiel lay crumpled by the altar, his body already sinking into the mud. The blackened knife floated beside him before vanishing into the water. Clara was gone. Only her pendant remained, caught on a root near the shore. I picked it up, a small brass charm shaped like a crescent moon. For a long time, I just stood there, listening. Nothing. No whispers, no breathing earth. Just silence. That was 3 days ago, or maybe 3 cycles. Time doesn't hold shape here anymore. I'm back at the clinic, writing this by candlelight. Amelia hasn't returned. The fog is starting to move again outside. The tape recorder on the desk blinked red once more. I pressed play. My own voice answered. You chose wrong. When I woke, the first thing I noticed was the quiet. Not the good kind, not the peaceful stillness that follows rain. This was wrong. The silence here felt like something holding its breath, waiting. I was lying on a bed in the same clinic, the same cracked ceiling, the same flickering light. Except everything was clean. The blood was gone from the walls, the mold, the rot gone, even the scent of decay that had soaked the air for weeks had vanished. For a moment, I thought maybe it had worked. Maybe Ezekiel was dead, and the swamp had been purged. But when I looked outside, I saw the truth. The same road, the same mist, the same crows perched on the same telephone wires, all frozen, motionless, as if the world had been copied and pasted from memory. And on the horizon, the fog was already starting to move again. There was a sound behind me, faint, rhythmic. I turned. The tape recorder on the table had turned itself on. Day 1, Investigator Marcus Kane reporting from Black Hollow. The town appears abandoned. Locals mention sightings near the swamp. My own voice, the same log I recorded weeks ago when I first arrived. Except this time, the tone was off. There was a tremor in the voice, like someone else was speaking through me. I grabbed the tape and hit stop. The window reflected my face, pale, hollow-eyed. And for a second, another face appeared behind mine, Clara's. She whispered something. You're not out yet. I found the pendant still clutched in my hand, the crescent moon charm she'd worn. I didn't remember keeping it, but it pulsed faintly, warm against my skin. Clara, I whispered. The fog outside seemed to respond, rippling toward the window, as if drawn by her name. I pocketed the pendant and stepped outside. The town was perfect, too perfect. No dust, no insects, no sound. Every window reflected the same pale sky. And then I saw her. Standing at the edge of the main street, barefoot, wearing the same torn dress from the swamp. Her hair fell across her face, dripping wet. Clara. She looked up. But her eyes were black, not empty, but full, like the surface of deep water hiding something underneath. You shouldn't have stayed, she said softly. It doesn't end this way. What does? The hollow, she tilted her head. You tried to seal it, but every time you kill it, you start the next cycle. You feed it. I stepped closer, then tell me how to stop it. Her gaze shifted past me toward the clinic. You already know, you just don't want to remember. The ground beneath her rippled, faint waves spreading from her feet, distorting the street like liquid glass. Clara. She raised a hand, and for an instant the world blinked. I was standing in the swamp again. The altar gone, the air heavy and wet. I turned, and there she was again, now younger. Her hair shorter, her face unscarred. The Clara I'd met the first time I came here. She smiled faintly. You remember this place? I did. This was before the vault, before the deaths. Before everything. We were partners then, both agents sent to investigate the disappearances. She had been the first to go missing. And I had been the one who found the vault, desperate to bring her back. I opened it, I whispered. You did, she said, but you didn't understand what it was asking for. Her expression softened. You gave it what it wanted most. I felt the weight of it before she said it. Me. She nodded. You didn't kill me, you offered me. The word struck like cold iron. I took a step back, No, I tried to save you. You did, but that's not how the hollow works. It doesn't care about guilt or mercy. It takes what's given. The swamp shimmered. Shadows moved beneath the surface, hands, faces, memories. Clara's voice broke. You pulled me out, Marcus, but you didn't bring me back. You brought back what the hollow made from me. Her form flickered, her reflection in the water lagging behind, moving on a different rhythm. I'm not your Clara, she said softly. I'm what's left of her. The fog thickened, pressing in like walls. You're lying, I muttered. You bled, you felt pain, you remembered. I remember because you do, she said. You kept me alive inside your guilt. The pendant around my neck began to glow, pulsing in sync with her words. Choose. The whisper came again, not from her, not from the swamp, but from inside me. Clara stepped closer. The knives were never the key, they were symbols, choices carved in metal. Then what is the key? You are. Her eyes met mine, calm, almost kind. The hollow doesn't feed on death, Marcus. It feeds on repetition, on your refusal to let go. I can't. You can, she smiled sadly. You just don't want to lose me again. The fog around us trembled. Shapes began to form, the altar, the vault, the clinic, all overlapping, as though time itself was collapsing. End it, the voices chanted. End it. Clara reached for my hand. You have to remember what really happened that night. The world fractured. I was back in the past, rain pouring, my uniform soaked, my hands shaking as I dragged Clara's body from the swamp. She wasn't breathing. Lightning flashed. I screamed her name, pressing on her chest again and again. Wake up, please, Clara. Her eyes fluttered open. But they were wrong. Too black, too deep. She whispered, thank you. Then the swamp lit up around us, the vault glowing, the water rising, her body twitching in my arms as the hollow poured into her through me. And I understood. I hadn't saved her, I'd invited it in. When the vision faded, I was on my knees in the mud. Clara stood before me, her form half solid, half smoke. You know now, she said quietly, there's only one way to stop it. I shook my head. No, there has to be another way. She knelt down, touching my face. Letting me go isn't killing me, it's setting me free. The pendant in my hand burned white-hot. She took a step back, her voice barely a whisper. In the echo. I closed my eyes and crushed the charm in my fist. A scream tore through the air, not hers, not mine, but the swamp's. The fog convulsed, the ground shaking as the water bled upward in pillars of light. Every reflection of her, of me, of the altar shattered. And for the first time, I felt nothing. When I opened my eyes, the swamp was gone. So was she. I was standing in a wide, dry basin, the remains of the hollow, cracked and silent. The air was still. The sun rose, pale and real. And for a long, long time I didn't move. Then I heard it, faint, distant. The hum of a heartbeat beneath the earth. Slow, measured, waiting. I knelt, pressing my hand against the ground. And in the stillness, a whisper came through the soil, Clara's voice, faint but unmistakable. Not yet. The earth beneath my hands was still warm. That was the first thing I noticed, the faint heat seeping up from the ground, pulsing in time with the low hum that rolled through the basin like the echo of a heartbeat. I rose slowly. My clothes were caked in dried mud, but there was no swamp anymore, only cracked soil and skeletal trees that stretched like fingers toward a colorless sky. Black Hollow was gone. Or maybe I was. The horizon shimmered, bending in and out of focus. Shadows wavered where there should have been movement, faint outlines of houses, trees, people, all transparent, all watching. They stood there in silence, the ghosts of the town that once was. The hollow had taken them too. I started walking. My boots crunched on the brittle ground, each step stirring up a puff of dust that drifted like smoke. The basin stretched endlessly in every direction, but no matter how far I went, the center was always ahead, a faint shimmer, a pulse of light that grew stronger the closer I got. The pendant was gone, the tape recorder too. Even my sidearm had rusted into a useless lump of metal. All I had left were memories, and even those felt thinner than before, like paper soaked in rain. As I walked, I began to hear voices. Not whispers this time, but clear, like radio chatter bleeding through static. Marcus Kane, FBI. The subject has been apprehended. Marcus, it's your sister. Don't leave me here. You failed her, you'll fail again. The voices overlapped, merged, shifted. I stopped trying to separate them. They weren't ghosts. They were memories the hollow had devoured and replayed, each one looping endlessly in its own echo. And beneath it all, one voice cut through the noise, deep, calm, and too familiar. You brought this upon yourself. Ezekiel. He was waiting for me at the center. The ground dipped into a shallow pit, its surface rippling like water, though it was made of light and dust. Ezekiel stood in the middle, his white shirt unblemished, his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were gone, replaced by smooth, pale hollows that reflected nothing. Marcus, he said, as if greeting me for the first time, you've come full circle. I stepped closer. You're not real. He smiled. Neither are you. I said nothing. The hollow remembers, he continued, his tone that of a priest reciting scripture. It remembers pain, grief, and every soul that feeds it. You've tried to kill it, but you can't destroy memory. You can only add to it. He gestured to the basin around us. This is what's left of Black Hollow, echoes of choices, frozen in repetition. You're the last one who hasn't accepted it. Accepted what? That you are part of it. The pit began to pulse faster, each throb shaking the ground. Ezekiel's voice deepened, overlapping itself, becoming something older. You opened the vault not because of her, but because of you. You wanted to prove you could save someone, that you weren't the same boy who lost his sister. Shut up. You've spent your life chasing ghosts, Marcus. Cases, victims, monsters, all reflections of the same wound. I said shut up. The ground cracked beneath me, glowing veins of light spreading outward. But Ezekiel only smiled. You don't need to fight it. The hollow isn't your enemy, it's the part of you that never forgot. The earth split. I fell to my knees as the light surged upward, forming shapes, faces I knew, hands reaching out, voices calling my name. Clara, my sister, victims I'd failed to save. All of them whispering the same thing. Let us rest. I tried, I said through clenched teeth. I tried to save you all. Clara's face formed from the light, calm, serene, no longer hollow-eyed. You can't save what's already gone, she said. You can only forgive it. Her touch was warm, almost human, and yourself. I can't, I whispered. You can, she said, but only if you stop remembering. The hollow stirred. A low rumble rose from the depths, the sound of 1,000 voices merging into one. The light thickened, twisting upward into a massive shape, the entity itself, the true form of the hollow. It towered over us, made of the same pale light and darkness intertwined, eyes glowing white like stars drowned in water. I could see every soul it had devoured inside it, each trapped moment, each face screaming silently in the flow of its body. Ezekiel turned to it, his arms spread like a preacher before a god. Do you see now? He called out. It was never meant to end. You and I, we are its caretakers. The entity moved, its form bending toward him, tendrils of mist curling around his shoulders. He smiled. We are the memory that keeps it alive. I raised the broken gun. Then it dies with us. I fired. The sound tore through the silence, but the bullet never hit. The hollow caught it midair, the slug suspended, turning to ash. Ezekiel laughed. You can't kill memory with violence, Marcus. You can only overwrite it. And suddenly I understood. He was right. I couldn't destroy the hollow, but I could replace what it remembered. Not death, not guilt. Something else. Something true. I turned toward Clara's fatting shape. You said I offered you, I whispered, that I gave you to it. She nodded, and it learned what love looks like through that pain. Then maybe it can learn something new. I closed my eyes, pressing my hands into the light. I thought of her, not the dying Clara, but the laughing one, the one who drank bitter coffee and argued with me about everything, the one who believed in saving people, even when I didn't. I thought of my sister, her smile the night before she disappeared, the promise I made to find her again. I thought of every person I failed, every face that haunted my sleep. And I said softly, I forgive you. Then louder, I forgive me. The ground erupted. The light spread outward in waves, not violent, not angry, just bright. Ezekiel screamed as the hollow surged through him, the white void swallowing his body whole. The entity convulsed, its form flickering between shapes: human, animal, shadow, water. The faces inside it began to still, one by one, fading like candle flames in dawn. The light reached my chest. It didn't burn. It warmed. Clara's voice whispered through the air, fading with each word. You did it, Marcus. I reached for her, but there was only mist. And then silence. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the road. The same cracked asphalt, the same swamp trees leaning over the water. But this time there was sunlight. Real sunlight. No fog, no whispers, no ghosts. In the distance, a sign stood by the roadside, weathered, half buried in moss. Black Hollow, 2 miles. I smiled, shaking my head. Of course. The road behind me was gone. Only one direction left. I checked the rearview mirror before getting into the car. For a brief second, Clara's reflection was there, smiling faintly, her eyes clear. Drive, she mouthed. I turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. The radio flickered on by itself, static fading into the faint crackle of my own voice, calm, steady. Day 1, Investigator Marcus Kane reporting from Black Hollow. The town appears abandoned. I laughed quietly. Not this time. And as I drove toward the fog, the road unfolded endlessly ahead, the same yet different. Maybe that's what freedom looks like here. Not escape. Just the chance to begin again.